The alarm on the bridge of the human ship Wanderer made a loud beeping sound. Captain Jake Martinez looked up from his coffee and walked over to the communications desk. The sound meant someone was sending a distress call. "What do we have, Ben?" Jake asked his communications officer. Ben Torres frowned at his screen. "It's weak, Captain. Coming from the old mining station in this system. The signal keeps cutting in and out." Jake looked at the screen. The Kepler 442 system had one mining station, but it had been empty for months. Everyone knew that. The Zilani, aliens who ran it, had left after some kind of attack. "Could be a trap," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, his first officer. She always worried about things like this. Pirates sometimes use fake distress calls to catch ships. Jake thought about it. Amy was right to be careful. Space was dangerous and humans had only been traveling between stars for 50 years. They had made friends with some alien races, but they had enemies too. "The signal is getting weaker," Ben said. "Whoever is sending it doesn't have much power left." Jake made his choice. "Set course for the mining station, but keep our weapons ready." Amy looked unhappy, but she nodded. "Yes, Captain." The Wanderer was not a big ship. It had only 20 crew members. They were explorers, not fighters. But Jake had served in the Earth Defense Force before becoming an explorer. He knew how to be careful. 2 hours later, they reached the mining station. It was huge, built into a large asteroid. The station looked dark and empty. No lights were on. No ships were docked at it. "I'm not getting any life signs," said Dr. Lisa Chang from her medical station. "But the distress signal is still coming from inside," Ben added. Jake studied the station through the main screen. It looked like a dead place, but someone inside was asking for help. "Amy, pick 3 crew members. We're going over there." "Captain, I really think someone is alive in there," Jake said. "We can't just leave them." Amy sighed. She knew Jake well enough to know he wouldn't change his mind. "I'll get Sam Mitchell and 2 security officers." 30 minutes later, Jake and his team floated through space toward the mining station. They wore thick spacesuits and carried emergency supplies. The station's docking bay was open, which made things easier. Inside the station, everything was dark. Their helmet lights made scary shadows on the walls. The air was cold and thin, but it was still breathable. "The distress signal is coming from the lower levels," Ben's voice said in their helmets. They walked through empty corridors. Jake could see that people had left quickly. Doors were open and personal items were scattered on the floor. Whatever had happened here, it had happened fast. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Sam Mitchell, their engineer. They took an elevator down 5 levels. The distress signal got stronger as they went deeper into the station. Finally, they reached a storage area filled with boxes and old equipment. "Over here," called one of the security officers. Behind a stack of metal boxes, they found a small space that someone had turned into a hiding place. Blankets were spread on the floor. Empty food containers were piled in one corner, and in the middle of it all, a figure was curled up holding something small. Jake stepped closer and his heart stopped. It was an alien female, but not like any he had seen before. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to shine slightly in their lights. She had long silver hair and was very thin. Too thin. She was clearly starving. In her arms she held a tiny alien baby. The female alien opened her eyes when their lights hit her. Jake could see fear in them. She pulled the baby closer to her chest and tried to move away from them. "It's okay," Jake said softly, even though he knew she probably didn't understand English. "We're here to help." The alien female stared at them. Jake could see she was trying to decide if they were dangerous. Dr. Chang stepped forward slowly. She took off her helmet, showing her face. "I'm a doctor," she said gently. The alien female's eyes went wide. She had never seen a human before, but something in Dr. Chang's voice seemed to calm her. Jake also removed his helmet. The air was cold and smelled stale, but it was safe to breathe. "We got your distress call," he said. The alien female opened her mouth and made soft sounds. It wasn't English, but Jake could hear the sadness in her voice. She pointed to the baby, then to herself, then made a gesture like she was asking for help. Dr. Chang knelt down and slowly reached out her hands. The alien female watched her carefully. Then let her look at the baby. Dr. Chang's face became serious. This baby is very sick, she whispered to Jake. And the mother is not much better. They're both starving and dehydrated. Jake felt something twist in his chest. He had seen suffering before, but something about this mother and baby made him think of his own lost family. 2 years ago, his wife and unborn child had died in a transport accident. He still had nightmares about it. Can you help them? He asked. I can try, but they need to come with us. They won't survive much longer here. Jake looked at the alien female. She was watching him with large, intelligent eyes. He could see she was afraid, but also hopeful. We're going to take you somewhere safe, he told her. She didn't understand his words, but she seemed to understand his tone. She nodded slowly. Amy's voice crackled through their helmet radios. Captain, we should call this in to Earth Command. Let them decide what to do. Jake thought about it. Earth Command would want to follow procedures. They would want to hand the aliens over to Zilani authorities. But looking at this mother and baby, Jake knew that might take too long. They needed help now. We'll call it in from the ship, he said, after we get them medical attention. Jake, Amy said, using his first name, which she only did when she was really worried. Bringing unknown aliens aboard could be dangerous. Jake looked at the alien female again. She was gently stroking her baby's head. The baby was so small and weak it barely moved. Look at them, Amy. They're not dangerous. They're dying. Dr. Chang had already started treating the baby with supplies from her medical kit. The alien female watched every move she made. I need to get them to the ship's medical bay, Dr. Chang said. This baby might not make it another day. Jake made his decision. Sam, help Dr. Chang carry them. We're going back to the ship. As they prepared to leave, the alien female reached out and touched Jake's hand. Her skin was cold but soft. She looked into his eyes and made more soft sounds. Jake didn't need to understand her language to know what she was saying. She was thanking him. What's your name? Jake asked, even though he knew she wouldn't understand. The alien female seemed to realize what he was asking. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Kirith. Then she pointed to the baby and said, Nixri. Kirith, Jake repeated. She smiled slightly and nodded. As they carried Kirith and baby Nixri back to their ship, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. But every time he looked at the weak baby in Dr. Chang's arms, he knew he had made the right choice. Some decisions came from the head. Others came from the heart. This one came from the heart, and Jake had learned to trust his heart, even when his head told him he might be making a mistake. Behind them, the empty mining station grew dark again. But now, instead of being a tomb, it was just an empty building. The life it had been hiding was safe. Dr. Chang worked for 6 hours straight to save baby Nixri. Jake stood outside the medical bay watching through the window. Kirith sat beside the small bed where her baby lay connected to human medical machines. She had not moved from that spot since they brought her aboard. The baby's temperature is too high, Dr. Chang told Jake. His lungs are full of fluid. I don't know if our medicine will work on his species. Jake watched Kirith gently touch her baby's tiny hand. Do whatever you can. Amy Foster found Jake in the hallway 2 hours later. She looked tired and worried. Jake, we need to talk, she said. They walked to Jake's office. Amy closed the door and sat down. The crew is asking questions, she said. Ben thinks we should have called Earth Command first. Sam is worried about using our medical supplies on aliens. Some of the others think this could be dangerous. Jake understood their concerns. Space travel was expensive. Every bit of food and medicine was planned carefully. Taking care of 2 aliens meant less for the crew. What do you think? Jake asked Amy. Amy was quiet for a moment. I think you're letting your emotions make decisions for you. Ever since Maria and the baby died, you've been different. Jake felt pain in his chest when Amy mentioned his dead wife. Maria had been pregnant when the transport ship exploded. Jake had been away on a mission. He never got to say goodbye. This isn't about Maria, Jake said, but even he wasn't sure if that was true. Isn't it? Amy asked gently. A mother and baby in danger? You couldn't save your family, so now you want to save theirs? Jake was quiet. Maybe Amy was right. Maybe he was being emotional instead of logical. But when he thought about Kirith and Nixri dying alone on that station, he knew he couldn't have left them. Even if you're right, Jake said, I won't regret saving them. Amy sighed. I'm not saying you should regret it. I'm saying you need to think about what comes next. Where are we taking them? What happens when we reach Earth? Jake had been wondering the same thing. Earth Command had rules about bringing aliens to human space. There would be questions and investigations. We'll figure it out, he said. 3 days later, baby Nixri was getting better. His fever had broken, and he was breathing easier. Dr. Chung had discovered that human antibiotics worked well on Zilani biology. Kirith was also stronger. She could walk around the ship now, though she stayed close to the medical bay. Jake had started visiting her every day, bringing her food and trying to learn some of her language. The Zilani language was musical and soft. Kirith spoke slowly and patiently when Jake tried to repeat her words. She seemed to understand that he was trying to help. Water, Jake said in Zilani, holding up a cup. Veltar, Kirith corrected gently. Veltar, Jake repeated. Kirith smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen from her. It made her face look younger and less afraid. Dr. Chang came in carrying baby Nixri. The baby's eyes were open and alert. His skin had a healthy shine to it. Kirith took her baby and held him close. She spoke to him in their language, and the baby made soft sounds back. Jake didn't need to understand the words to know she was telling Nixri that everything would be okay. He's much better, Dr. Chang said. The infection is almost gone. That evening, Jake was in his office when Ben Torres knocked on his door. Captain, I've been monitoring communications, Ben said. There's been some talk about missing Zilani from the mining station. What kind of talk? The Zilani government is asking questions. They want to know what happened to their people. Ben paused. They're specifically asking about a female named Kirith. Jake felt cold. What are they saying? They're calling her a fugitive. They say she ran away when the station was attacked, leaving her duties behind. Jake thought about the weak, starving woman they had found hiding in the storage room. She hadn't looked like someone who had run away. She looked like someone who had been left behind. There's something else, Ben said. I intercepted a message from the Zilani embassy on Earth. They want her returned immediately. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet ship, thinking about what Ben had told him. In the medical bay, he found Kirith awake, feeding her baby. She looked up when Jake entered. Over the past week, she had learned to recognize the different humans on the ship. Jake was the one who brought her food and tried to speak her language. Dr. Chang was the healer who had saved her baby. Amy was the worried one who watched everything carefully. Nixri, hungry, Kirith said in broken English. She had been learning human words too. Jake sat down near them. Kirith, he said carefully, do you understand the word home? She nodded. Home, where family lives. Do you want to go home, to your people? Kirith's face changed. The peaceful look disappeared, replaced by fear. She held Nixri closer to her chest. No home, she said quietly. Home dangerous. Why dangerous? Kirith struggled with the English words. Finally, she pointed to a scar on her arm that Jake had never noticed before. Then she pointed to another mark on her neck. Bad Zilani hurt Kirith. Kill Telvak. She touched her heart. Telvak, mate. Father of Nixri. Jake began to understand. Kirith wasn't a fugitive who had run away. She was a refugee who had been hiding. Who hurt you? Jake asked. Kirith shook her head. She didn't have enough English words to explain, but her fear was clear. Over the next few days, Jake spent more time with Kirith. She was learning English quickly, and he was learning more Zilani words. Slowly, pieces of her story came out. She had worked on the mining station with her mate. Telvak. They had discovered something wrong with how the station was being run. When they tried to report it, bad things started happening. Telvak was killed. Kirith had hidden with her baby, afraid that the same people who killed her mate would kill them too. We were trapped, Kirith explained to Jake one evening. No ship, no way to leave, had to hide. Jake realized that Kirith and Nixery had been hiding on that station for months, slowly starving, too afraid to ask for help because they didn't know who to trust. You're safe now, Jake told her. But even as he said it, Jake wondered if that was true. If the Zilani government wanted her back and if they really thought she was a criminal, bringing her to Earth might not keep her safe at all. On the 15th day of their journey to Earth, Jake made a decision that surprised even him. He called a meeting with his senior officers. I've been thinking about our passengers, he said to Amy, Dr. Chang, Ben, and Sam. The Zilani government wants them back, Amy said. I know, but I don't think we should give them back. Everyone stared. At Jake, Ben spoke first. Captain, we can't just keep them. There are laws about this kind of thing. What if the laws are wrong? Jake asked. What if sending them back means sending them to die? Dr. Chang nodded slowly. I've been examining Kirith more carefully. She has old injuries that look like torture marks. Someone hurt her badly before she ever got to that mining station. That settles it, Jake said. We're not handing them over to anyone until we know they'll be safe. Amy looked worried. Jake, this could end your career. Earth Command won't like you making decisions like this on your own. Jake thought about his career. He had worked hard to become a starship captain. But when he imagined Kirith and baby Nixery being taken away to face unknown danger, his career seemed less important. Some things matter more than careers, he said. That night, Jake sat with Kirith in the ship's small garden area. She was teaching Nixery to hold his head up while Jake read reports on his tablet. Jake, Kirith said suddenly. He looked up. She was watching him with her large, intelligent eyes. Thank you, she said in English. You saved Nixery. You saved Kirith. Jake felt that familiar twist in his chest. You don't need to thank me. Yes, need to thank, she insisted. You good human. You have kind heart. Jake thought about what Amy had said about how he was letting his emotions make decisions. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was trying to save Kirith and Nixery because he couldn't save his own wife and child. But looking at them now, healthy and safe, Jake didn't care about his motivations. Whatever the reason, he had done the right thing. We'll figure out what to do when we reach Earth, he promised. Kirith nodded. She trusted him. That trust felt heavy to Jake, but also precious. 5 days from Earth, baby Nixery smiled for the first time since they found him. It was a tiny thing, but it made everyone on the ship feel happy. Even the crew members who had been worried about resources started bringing little gifts for the baby. Jake knew that reaching Earth would bring new problems. But for now, as he watched Kirith play with her healthy baby, he was glad he had listened to his heart instead of his head. The Wanderer arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. Jake stood on the bridge watching his home planet grow larger on the screen. He had been away for 8 months, but coming home didn't feel as good as it usually did. Today, he was nervous. Earth, command is calling, Ben said from his communication station. Jake took a deep breath. Put them through. Admiral Patricia Wells appeared on the main screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and stern eyes. Jake had worked with her before and respected her, but he knew she followed rules very carefully. Captain Martinez, she said, we understand you have some unauthorized passengers aboard your ship. Yes, Admiral. 2 Zilani refugees who needed medical help. Admiral Wells frowned. According to the Zilani embassy, one of these refugees is actually a fugitive from justice. They want her returned immediately. Jake felt his heart beat faster. With respect, Admiral, I don't think that's accurate. These people were hiding and starving. They're not criminals. That's not for you to decide, Captain. You should have contacted us before bringing aliens to Earth space. Jake knew she was right about procedure, but he also knew he would make the same choice again. I'm ordering you to dock at Station Alpha, Admiral Wells continued. Our security. Teams will take custody of your passengers. The communication ended. Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was watching him carefully. Station Alpha is a military base, Amy said quietly. Not exactly a welcoming place for refugees. 2 hours later, the Wanderer docked at the cold metal station orbiting Earth. Jake went to the medical bay to find Kirith and Nixri. Dr. Chang was with them, packing medical supplies. What happens now? Dr. Chang asked. Before Jake could answer, the door opened. 6 security officers in black uniforms entered, led by a tall man with suspicious eyes. I'm Commander Rick Stone, he said. I'm here to escort your passengers to a secure facility. Kirith stood up quickly, holding baby Nixri. She looked at Jake with frightened eyes. It's okay, Jake told her, though he wasn't sure if that was true. Commander Stone studied Kirith carefully. She doesn't look dangerous, but appearances can be deceiving. She's not dangerous, Jake said firmly. She's a mother protecting her child. We'll determine that after questioning, Commander, Stone replied. They took Kirith and Nixri away. Kirith looked back at Jake as they left, and he could see the trust in her eyes turning to confusion and fear. 3 days later, Jake sat in a small office facing Admiral Wells and 2 other officers. One was Commander Stone. The other was a woman Jake didn't recognize. This is Dr. Helen Rice from the Xenobiology Institute, Admiral Wells said. She's been studying your Zilani passengers. Dr. Rice opened a tablet and began reading. The female, Kirith, shows signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration consistent with prolonged hiding. The child, Nixri, had a serious respiratory infection that could have been fatal without treatment. What about their legal status? Admiral Wells asked. Commander Stone answered. The Zilani government has officially requested extradition. They claim Kirith abandoned her post during an emergency and violated several colonial laws. Jake felt angry. Have you asked her what really happened? She claims she was hiding from criminals within her own government, Commander Stone said. But that's what any fugitive would claim. Where are they now? Jake asked. In a secure facility, Admiral Wells said. They're comfortable, but they can't leave. You mean they're in prison? They're in protective custody while we decide what to do. Jake spent the next week trying to visit Kirith and Nixri, but he was denied access. He was told there were security concerns and ongoing investigations. Finally, he contacted his old friend Helen Price, a lawyer who worked in the city below the station. I need your help, Jake told her over a video call. There are 2 Zilani being held against their will, and I think they're in real danger if they're sent back to their home planet. Helen was a small woman with bright red hair and a reputation for fighting impossible cases. She listened carefully as Jake explained the situation. This is complicated, she said when he finished. Earth has treaties with the Zilani government. If they want their citizens back, we usually have to comply. Even if those citizens will be killed? That's what we need to prove, Helen said. I'll need to interview them. It took Helen 3 days to get permission to visit Kirith. When she came back, she looked troubled. Jake, this is worse than you thought, she said. Kirith isn't just afraid of criminals. She's afraid of her own government. They met in Helen's office. Jake sat across from her desk while she organized her notes. Kirith told me she and her mate discovered that some Zilani officials were working with the pirates who attacked outer colonies, Helen explained. When they tried to report it, her mate was murdered. By pirates? No, by other Zilani. Government agents who wanted to keep the corruption secret. Jake felt sick. So when the mining station was attacked, it wasn't random. They were specifically targeting Kirith and her mate to silence them. Helen continued reading from her notes. Kirith says she has evidence of the corruption, but it's hidden back on the mining station. She was too afraid to retrieve it when you found her. What kind of evidence? Communications between Zilani officials and pirate leaders, financial records showing payments, video recordings of meetings. Jake thought about this. If that's true, then sending her back to the Zilani government would be like signing her death sentence. Exactly. But proving it will be difficult. The Zilani embassy is putting pressure on Earth Command to return her quickly. Meanwhile, Kirith and Nixri were being held in what Earth Command called a family accommodation unit. It was a small apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area. The walls were white and clean, but there were no windows and the door was locked from outside. Dr. Chang was allowed to visit once a day to check on baby Nixri. She reported that both mother and child were getting weaker, despite having enough food and medical care. It's the stress and isolation, Dr. Chang told Jake. Kirith barely sleeps. She's constantly worried about what will happen to them. What about her telepathic abilities? Jake asked. Zilani are supposed to have some kind of mental powers. That's part of the problem. Telepathic species need mental stimulation and social contact to stay healthy. Being locked up like this is making her abilities fade away. Jake felt frustrated and helpless. He had saved Kirith and Nixri from dying on the mining station, only to watch them suffer in Earth's protective custody. 2 weeks after their arrival, things got worse. The Zilani ambassador, a cold-faced alien named Sevran, held a press conference. The human government is harboring a dangerous criminal, he announced to news reporters. Kirith is wanted for abandoning her post during a crisis, endangering lives, and theft of government property. If Earth does not return her immediately, we will reconsider our trade agreements. Jake watched the news broadcast in his temporary quarters on the station. The trade agreements with the Zilani were worth billions of dollars to Earth. Jobs and resources depended on them. Helen called him that evening. The pressure is building. Earth Command wants to resolve this quickly and quietly. By handing her over? That's the easy solution. One alien's life versus Earth's economic interests. Jake felt angry and helpless. There has to be something we can do. I'm working on it, but I need more time to build a case for asylum. How much time? Weeks, maybe months. We don't have months. They want to send her back next week. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He walked through the station's corridors thinking about Kirith and Nixri locked in their white room. He thought about his crew, who had risked their careers to help him rescue the aliens. He thought about doing what was right versus doing what was easy. The next morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He called Amy, Ben, Dr. Chang, and Sam to his quarters. I need to ask you something, he said when they were all sitting around his small table. And I want you to know that saying no won't hurt your careers or our friendship. They looked at him curiously. I think Kirith and Nixri are going to be killed if they're sent back to the Zilani. I want to help them escape. Everyone was quiet. Finally, Amy spoke. Jake, that would be treason. I know. You could go to prison. I know that too. Dr. Chang leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? Helen thinks she can win an asylum hearing if she has enough time and evidence. We need to buy her that time. How? Sam asked. Jake looked at each of his friends. By making sure the whole galaxy knows Kirith's story. By making it impossible for Earth Command to quietly hand her over. Ben nodded slowly. A public campaign. Get the news media involved. Exactly. But it has to be done carefully. And it has to be done soon, Amy sighed. This is crazy, Jake. Maybe. But it's also right. One by one, his crew members agreed to help. They had all seen Kirith's fear and Nixri's innocent face. They had all watched Jake try to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. What do we do first? Amy asked. Jake smiled. For the first time in weeks, he felt hopeful. We tell the truth. Helen Price worked through the night, preparing documents for Kirith's asylum hearing. The hearing had been scheduled for the next morning, and she knew it would be her only chance to save the Zilani mother and child. Jake paced around Helen's office, too nervous to sit down. Through the windows, he could see Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. Somewhere above them, on Station Alpha, Kirith and Nixri were waiting to learn their fate. I've been researching Zilani law, Helen said, looking up from her computer. What Kirith told me about the corruption makes sense. There have been rumors for years about officials working with pirates. But rumors aren't proof, Jake said. No, but I found something interesting. Helen turned her screen toward Jake. 3 months ago, a Zilani journalist named Tor Van published an article about corruption in the colonial mining program. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. Jake felt cold. Just like what happened to Kirith's mate. Exactly. There's a pattern here. People who ask questions about the mining stations end up dead or missing. Helen's assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Price, there's someone here to see you. He says it's about the Zalani case. A few minutes later, a young human man entered the office. He looked nervous and kept checking over his shoulder. I'm Danny Walsh, he said. I work at the Zalani embassy as a translator. I heard about the asylum hearing tomorrow. Helen studied him carefully. What can I do for you, Mr. Walsh? Danny sat down and pulled out a small data device. 3 days ago, I was translating a private communication between Ambassador Sevran and someone on the Zalani homeworld. I probably shouldn't have listened, but what did you hear? Jake asked. The ambassador was talking to someone called Director Morketh. They were discussing Kirith. The ambassador said she needed to be returned quickly before she could spread her poison to other species. Helen leaned forward. Did they say anything else? Director Morketh said that Kirith and her mate had been dealt with once, but the job wasn't finished properly. He wants to finish it this time. Jake felt his heart beat faster. They admitted to trying to kill her? Not directly, but the implication was clear, Danny said. There's more. I recorded the conversation. Helen's eyes went wide. You recorded a private diplomatic communication? I know it was wrong, but I couldn't let them hurt an innocent mother and baby. Danny handed her the data device. This proves that sending Kirith back would be murder. That evening, Helen called an emergency meeting with Admiral Wells and the other officials handling Kirith's case. Jake waited in Helen's office while she presented the new evidence. When she returned 2 hours later, she looked tired but hopeful. They've agreed to delay the extradition, she said. The recording Danny made changes everything. Earth Command wants to investigate further before making any decisions. What about Kirith and Nixri? They'll remain in protective custody, but under better conditions, and I'll be allowed to present a full asylum case. The next morning, Jake was finally allowed to visit Kirith. She was in a new room that had windows and more space. Baby Nixri was crawling around on a soft carpet, looking healthier and more active. Jake. Kirith stood up when she saw him. Her English had improved a lot during their separation. How are you feeling? Jake asked. Better. Dr. Chang says Nixri is growing strong. She paused, looking worried. But I am still afraid. Will your people send us back? Jake sat down beside her. We're fighting to keep you safe. There's going to be a hearing where you can tell everyone the truth about what happened. Kirith nodded, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. The truth is dangerous, that's why Telvak died. Not here. Here the truth will protect you. Over the next week, Helen prepared Kirith for the asylum hearing. They went over her story many times, making sure every detail was clear and accurate. Tell me again about what you discovered at the mining station, Helen said during one of their practice sessions. Kirith took a deep breath. Telvak was security chief. He noticed that some supply ships were arriving at night, when they were supposed to come during the day shift. He started watching them. What did he see? The ships were carrying more than supplies. They brought messages and packages for certain officials. Telvak recognized some of the ship captains as known pirates. Helen made notes on her tablet. When did you become involved? Telvak showed me the evidence he had collected. Photos, communication intercepts, financial records. The mining station director, Koltar, was selling information about colony defenses to pirate groups. What kind of information? Ship schedules, security codes, locations of valuable minerals. The pirates would attack other colonies using this information, then share the profits with Koltar and his supporters. Jake, who was listening to this session, felt sick. The pirate attacks on outer colonies had killed thousands of people over the past few years. If Kirith was right, some of those deaths were caused by Zalani government corruption. Did you try to report this to authorities? Helen asked. Kirith's face darkened. We sent our evidence to the Colonial Security Office on Zalani Prime. 2 days later, armed men came to our apartment. They killed Telvak and tried to kill me. But you escaped? I was in the nursery with Nixri when they came. I heard Telvak fighting them and then... Silence. I took Nixry and hid in the ventilation system until they left. Helen looked up from her notes. Where is this evidence now? Hidden in Telvak's security office at the mining station. In a secret compartment behind his desk. If it's still there, it proves everything I've told you. The asylum hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. It would be held in Earth Command's main courthouse, with judges from 3 different species presiding. The Zalani government would have lawyers arguing for Kirith's return, while Helen would argue for asylum. On Sunday night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Kirith's story and the evidence hidden on the mining station. Finally, he made a decision that he knew was risky. He called Ben Torres. Ben, I need a favor. Can you get a message to the Wanderer? Probably. Why? I want Amy to take a small team back to that mining station. If the evidence Kirith mentioned is still there, it could make all the difference at tomorrow's hearing. Ben was quiet for a moment. Jake, that's outside human space. If they're caught, it could be considered an act of war. I know, but if we don't try, Kirith and Nixry might die. I'll see what I can do. Monday morning arrived gray and rainy. The courthouse was filled with reporters, diplomats, and curious observers. Jake sat in the back row, watching as Kirith entered the courtroom carrying baby Nixry. She looked small and vulnerable in the large room full of important people. But when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. Helen guided her through her testimony, starting with her life on the mining station and ending with their rescue by Jake's crew. Kirith answered every question honestly, even when the answers made her look frightened or weak. The Zalani lawyer, a tall alien with golden skin, tried to make Kirith look like a liar and a coward. You claim you were hiding to protect your child, he said. But isn't it true that you were hiding because you had stolen classified information? I had evidence of crimes, Kirith replied firmly. Crimes that cost many lives. According to who? Your dead mate, who cannot testify? Kirith's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. According to the truth. The hearing continued for 6 hours. Jake watched as Helen presented Danny's recording and other evidence. The judges listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. Just as the hearing was about to end, Jake's phone buzzed with a message from Ben. Amy found it. Sending data now. Jake's heart raced as he forwarded the message to Helen. She looked at her phone, and her eyes went wide. Your Honor, Helen said, standing up. I have just received critical evidence that supports Ms. Kirith's testimony. The judges agreed to review the new evidence. For 30 minutes, the courtroom was silent as they studied files, photos, and recordings that Amy's team had retrieved from the mining station. Finally, the head judge, an elderly human woman, spoke. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that returning Kirith and her child to Zalani custody would put their lives in immediate danger. We hereby grant them asylum on Earth, with full protection under human law. The courtroom erupted in noise. Reporters rushed to ask questions. The Zalani lawyer argued loudly with his assistants, but Jake only watched Kirith, who was crying with relief while holding her baby close. For the first time since he had found them on that cold mining station, they were truly safe. Helen walked over to Jake with a big smile. We did it. No, Jake said, looking at Kirith and Nixry. They did it. They survived long enough for the truth to matter. That evening, as Jake walked back to his hotel, he got a call from Admiral Wells. Captain Martinez, she said. I wanted you to know that the evidence you helped uncover has started a major investigation. It looks like the corruption in the Zalani colonial system goes much deeper than anyone realized. What does that mean for Kirith? It means she's not just safe on Earth, she's a hero. Her courage in speaking out may prevent many more deaths. Jake smiled as he hung up the phone. Tomorrow, he would visit Kirith and Nixry in their new home. For the first time in months, he was looking forward to the future. 6 months after the asylum hearing, Jake walked through the gardens of the new Interspecies Refugee Center. The building was made of white stone and glass, surrounded by gardens that mixed plants from different worlds. It was a peaceful place, and Jake was proud to be part of it. "Uncle Jake!" a small voice called out in perfect English. Jake turned to see Nixry running toward him on his short legs. The baby who had been dying on the mining station was now a healthy, happy child who could walk and talk. His blue skin glowed with good health and his silver hair caught the sunlight. "Hello, little one," Jake said, picking up the child. "Where's your mother?" "Mama working with the flowers," Nixry said, pointing toward the botanical gardens. Jake carried Nixry through the gardens until they found Kirith. She was kneeling beside a bed of unusual plants, carefully tending to them with specialized tools. Her appearance had changed dramatically over the past months. She was no longer thin and afraid. Her skin had a healthy shine, and her silver hair was long and beautiful. "These are amazing," Jake said, looking at the plants. They looked like earth roses, but their petals changed color in the sunlight. "Hybrid flowers," Kirith explained, standing up and brushing dirt from her hands. "Zolani seeds grown in earth soil. They could not exist on either world alone, but here they are beautiful." Jake understood the symbolism. Like these hybrid flowers, Kirith and Nixry had found a way to thrive in a place that was neither fully alien nor fully human. "How many refugees are we expecting this week?" Jake asked. 12, Kirith replied. 3 families from the Antari system, fleeing religious persecution. 2 Zolani scientists who spoke out against the corruption, and 7 individuals from various species. Jake nodded. In the months since Kirith's asylum case, word had spread throughout the galaxy that Earth offered protection to those fleeing persecution. The refugee center had become home to over 200 beings from 15 different species. "Any problems with integration?" "Small ones," Kirith said as they walked back toward the main building. "The Vorthon family is having trouble with Earth gravity. The young crystalline is homesick and won't eat our food, but Dr. Chang and her team are helping them adjust." Jake smiled. Dr. Chang had left her position on the Wanderer to become the center's chief medical officer. She seemed happier than Jake had ever seen her, using her skills to help beings from across the galaxy. They entered the main building, where Jake could hear different languages being spoken. In one room, Amy Foster was teaching a class in basic English to a group of alien children. In another, Ben Torres was helping adult refugees learn to use Earth technology. "Captain Martinez!" Helen Price waved to him from across the lobby. She hurried over with a tablet in her hands. "I have news from the Zolani investigation." Jake and Kirith listened as Helen explained the latest developments. "Director Morketh and 6 other high-ranking officials have been arrested," she said. "The evidence from the mining station led to investigations on 12 different worlds. They've uncovered a corruption network that spans half the Zolani colonial system." "What about Ambassador Sevran?" Jake asked, recalled to Zolani Prime for questioning. His replacement, Ambassador Talari, has formally apologized to Earth for the previous administration's actions. Kirith listened to this news quietly. Jake could see mixed emotions on her face. "Are you okay?" he asked her. "I am happy that justice is being done," she said, "but I am also sad. Telvak should be here to see this. He died for the truth, and now the truth has won." Jake put his hand on her shoulder. "He would be proud of you. You finished what he started." That evening, Jake sat in his office reviewing applications from new refugees. Each file told a story of persecution, danger, and hope. There were far more applications than they could accept, which made each decision difficult. A knock on his door interrupted his work. "Come in." Kirith entered, carrying 2 cups of tea. She had learned to make earth tea the way Jake liked it. "You work too late," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. "There's always more to do," Jake replied. 3 more species have asked Earth to establish refugee programs. The Dominion Council wants to discuss making this an official intergalactic project. Kirith sat in the chair across from his desk. "And how do you feel about that?" Jake thought about the question. When he had first rescued Kirith and Nixry, he had been acting on impulse and emotion. Now he was part of something much larger. "Proud," he said finally, "and a little overwhelmed. A year ago, I was just a starship captain. Now I'm responsible for hundreds of lives." You were always responsible for lives, Kirith pointed out. Your crew trusted you to keep them safe. Now refugees from across the galaxy trust you to do the same. Jake smiled. When did you become so wise? When I learned that wisdom comes from surviving difficult times and choosing to help others do the same. They sat quietly for a while, drinking their tea and watching the stars through Jake's office window. Jake, Kirith said softly, there is something I have been wanting to ask you. What is it? Why did you really save us? Amy Foster told me that you lost your wife and child. Were you trying to replace them with us? Jake had been expecting this question for months. He had asked it of himself many times. At first, maybe, he admitted, when I saw you and Nixri, I thought about Maria and my unborn daughter. I couldn't save them, but I could save you. And now? Jake looked at Kirith's intelligent face, thinking about how she had grown from a frightened refugee into a confident leader who helped other displaced beings find new homes. Now I realized that I wasn't trying to replace my lost family. I was trying to build a new one. Not just with you and Nixri, but with all the people here who have chosen to help others instead of looking the other way. Kirith smiled. I feel the same way. Telvak and I thought our family died with him, but we have found a new family here, made up of humans and aliens who care about doing what is right. 2 weeks later, Jake stood before the United Nations General Assembly on Earth. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, all listening as he presented the annual report on the Interspecies Refugee Program. This year, we have provided sanctuary to over 800 beings from 23 different species, he reported. But more importantly, we have proven that cooperation between species is not just possible, it is essential for a just and peaceful galaxy. In the audience, Jake could see Kirith sitting with other refugee advocates. Nixri was on her lap, quietly playing with a small toy. The child who had almost died on a cold mining station was now healthy and happy, growing up as a citizen of Earth but proud of his Zelani heritage. After the presentation, Jake was approached by Admiral Wells. Outstanding work, Jake, she said. The refugee program has become one of Earth's most successful diplomatic initiatives. We're getting requests from governments across the galaxy, asking for help establishing similar programs. Thank you, Admiral. I have an offer for you, she continued. How would you like to return to space? We're planning a new mission to establish refugee centers on multiple worlds. You'd be the perfect person to lead it. Jake thought about the offer. Part of him missed the freedom of traveling between stars. But when he looked at Kirith and Nixri, he knew his answer. I appreciate the offer, but my place is here. There's still too much work to do. Admiral Wells nodded. I figured you'd say that, but the offer will remain open if you ever change your mind. That night, the refugee center held a celebration dinner. Beings from dozens of species shared food, stories, and laughter in the main dining hall. Jake watched as Nixri played with human children, speaking a mixture of English and Zelani that the other kids had learned to understand. He will grow up thinking this is normal, Kirith said, joining Jake at his observation post near the kitchen. What's normal? Different species living together peacefully, helping each other, caring more about character than appearance. Jake nodded. Maybe that should be normal. It is becoming normal thanks to people like you. Jake shook his head. Not just me, all of us. Your courage in speaking out, Dr. Chang's compassion, Amy's teaching, Helen's legal work. Even people like Danny Walsh, who risk their careers to do what's right. And don't forget Nixri and the other children, Kirith added. They are growing up in a world where helping refugees is natural and necessary. They will make the galaxy better than we ever could. As if summoned by their conversation, Nixri ran over to them. Uncle Jake, Mama, come play, he said in his cheerful voice. Jake looked at the happy child, then at Kirith, who had become like a sister to him over the past months. Beyond them, he could see dozens of beings from different worlds all living together in harmony. Yes, he said, taking Nixri's small hand. Let's play. As they walked toward the group of playing children, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought them all here. It had started with a simple distress call and a captain's decision to help two strangers in need. Now it had grown into something that was changing how species across the galaxy thought about cooperation and compassion. The future was uncertain, as it always was. There would be new challenges, new refugees who needed help, new problems to solve. But looking around at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds, all working together toward common goals, Jake felt optimistic about what they could accomplish.